Jane Goodall, the first step on the road to experiencing true awareness is the cessation of noise from within. Jane Goodall.
What's up, everybody? This is Darren and Jessica Salquist coming at you from Next Level.
Good vibes only.
What's happening today? Today we're going to get a good conversation on...
Well, one of the ways that we lead ourselves first is talking about the benefits of solitude. So if we break that quote down by Jane Goodall, it kind of brings all of that together for us. So it's saying the first step, right, on the road to experiencing self-awareness is cessation, which is basically, that means ending or being brought to an end. So we're ending the noise from within. And what does that mean is how do we bring more solitude into our life?
And so the big part, as I'm gathering here, is lead yourself first.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. So this actually comes from a book called Lead Yourself First from Raymond Kethledge and Michael Irwin. And they explore solitude and they talk about how when you lead yourself first, what does that actually look like? And how do we bring solitude and cultivating these things into our life so we can lead ourselves, but also be good leaders. And we're just going to really focus on these four main topics right now of the book because there's so many components of this book that we really can focus on and spend more time talking about leadership. But what they talk about is clarity, creativity, emotional balance, and moral courage. And we're going to break each one of those down.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. I have not read that book, and I know it's something that you've been looking into. So I'm going to have you kind of educate me on this today. I'm just going to go with the flow.
I would love to. So we have these Thursday night heroic meetup groups that we meet up with our coaches, other coaches, and those who are looking to grow. And this is a topic that I presented last week, which it always brings up amazing conversations because we really apply it to what's happening currently in our lives. And part of leading yourself first is leadership and leading is not always a title. Doesn't need to be a title. It's just from within. Like, how do you become a better leader of yourself? And that's, being able to connect with self, which we talk a lot about in a lot of our podcasts. So that very first one talks about clarity. And one of the quotes I wrote down is, solitude gives you the mental space to sift through thoughts and emotions, separating noise from truth. Mm-hmm. And for that is, I don't know how many of you that are listening that just have so many thoughts and distractions and things going on in life. We've talked a lot about distractions and not focusing on things that are maybe important to us, but we're constantly sifting through all of our thoughts and emotion, but separating the noise, right? That's the buzzing and the distractions and all the things that are happening from the actual truth. And that is something that is really great to be able to have clarity on, as this topic, one of the big fours of solitude is, the first one is clarity. So how do you give yourself clarity and separate that noise from the truth?
No, that's, I think, doing the deep work, right? Doing your research, diving into that. I think even what's going on in the world today, there's a lot of noise going on, right? You're hearing stories from both sides. A lot of different things that are going on in this world that one side says they're doing this, the other says they're doing that. And then how do we sift through that to really kind of come up with our own idea of or facts? And I think that's kind of the hard part sometimes when we go through this process of what direction do we go in. Yeah. And then the best way, what you're talking about right now, is that clarity, gaining that clarity. Mm-hmm. And as a leader, especially within an organization, is having clarity on the path of the direction that you'd like to lead. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I want clarity on how I'm going to lead myself so I can be a good leader for those. Yeah. Right? So you said gaining clarity, super important, but it's helping us look at things as we gain perspective, right? How do we make decisions? There's a lot of really important decision makers out in the world right now. And how are they gaining good perspective so that they can weigh the internal, external, good, the bad, all of the things that are distracting us in this world to be able to have a perspective to make a really important decision, right? We make important decisions every day, but there's so many levels of decision making from from the highest level you possibly can to every moment of every day that we're making decisions. And how good would it feel to be able to separate that noise and go, oh, that's just noise. Like that is noise. I'm going to let that simmer down a little bit and not be reactive. Because when my noise inside is really high, it gets me heightened to be more reactive or irritated or emotional, right? So I think part of it is listening to our own inner voice and really truly gaining that perspective of where the noise is and where the actual clarity of who I am, what I want, what's important to me, and then be able to act on that.
Yeah. I mean, one of the key things you said of all these things that are tugging for our attention, all these distractions that we have today, the biggest thing obviously is that phone that's constantly pinging or doing something like that. And I would say also within, as a leader and just kind of observing some of the things that I get to see at times when you're working from home, meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, right? And how do you really gain progress or move the ball when you're constantly going from meeting to meeting to meeting? And that's something that we're going to talk about in our next podcast, also the myth of multitasking.
Yeah.
But that's another thing that you even talk about, where having those deep work time blocks, and where as a leader, if in an organization, the constant email stream that you're getting, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's, I think, one thing that leaders dread when they go on vacation and coming back to a mailbox that's just like, I'm going to say stupidly overflowing, right? With all these different messages that probably 80%, if we talk about the 80-20 principle, right? 80% of them are probably not even worth reading. And it's really only the 20% that are actually going to have any weight to them. And so how, as an organization, as a leader, the clarity, gaining that to how do we decrease that?
Yeah.
And finding what is important, and for us to be productive and to not have all those distractions that are constantly tugging at us. And that's one of the things I've talked about, that today, in today's world, that we have more, we get more information. We have more information and inputs in our day, in one day, than what individuals had, probably 150 years ago, or 200 years ago, that they would get in their whole life.
Yeah.
And this is what we call progress.
Yeah, right. We fill it with so many things, and that is the biggest dread for some leaders, to say they're going on vacation, knowing that they're going to come back to just so much more work and detail and the anxiety of the day before, right?
Yeah, and
the day before returning.
I'm going to jump in there for you too, because it's, again, something I get to witness with you. Before you go on vacation, you're putting in extra hours to get caught up so you can go on vacation.
Yeah.
And so you can be prepared. And so you don't, that allows you maybe a little bit of freedom. So when you come back, you might not have what you would think is much on your plate. But I would still say your plate's overflowing when you get back. It doesn't really matter.
And we do that so that we can be present when we are on vacation. But yes, it's not a good system. And I think each one of these benefits of solitude, we can use probably my work examples sometimes for that. But as clarity, though, the goal is that we're able to take that time and not be going from item to item, from conversation to conversation. Sometimes we need to have solitude to make a good decision. And I have said this before, but when I have made the wrong decisions in my personal life, professional life, it's because it was a reaction and it wasn't well thought out. So the goal is to give yourself some time to fully think of your thoughts and process. It doesn't need to be perfect, but you do need clarity to make decisions, especially they're impacting the rest of your life and they're impacting the people that you serve. So
creating the pause between your stimulus and response, right? We're reacting to situations, which then we don't get the outcome that we're looking for because it's coming from a reactionary process versus the ability to pause and just like, let me really think about this. I have that mistake. I've made that a few times with clients that I work with, I get an email or a message from them, like, oh, I got to answer this right away. And then I send it. I'm like, oh, God, I left 2 or 3 things out of there, right?
Yeah.
Or no, I usually leave 2 or 3, as I process it more. It's like, oh, I should include it. And I end up sending like 2 or 3 more emails, like, oh, yeah, don't forget about this. And I'm working on it. Where I'm learning is I don't need to respond right then and there.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's the problem that we get with emails, that we think we need to respond right now.
So solitude. Right? So we talked about clarity. So let's talk about creativity and how creativity can help you with that benefit of solitude. So ideas don't usually arrive in chaos. So kind of these are all very complementary of each other. They land when your mind is still enough to receive them. And I feel like we really hit this point already of ideas when I'm out running, when you're out running, right? When we're doing things that are peaceful and nice and blissful, maybe meditation, maybe we're having presence and silence and being calm, right? Without tons of distractions. I feel like that's when we share our best ideas, So solitude creates the conditions for an original thought, free from pressure to conform or perform. And I like that a lot because a lot of times decision-making can be based off of how you want to be perceived and how you want to perform and conform, not just the fact that it's just the original thought. That's your thought.
Yeah. I'm going to let you keep flowing on that.
Okay. So creativity. Creativity can be absolutely stunted, when we don't have some solitude itself. And I'll just speak personally where if I'm going, and I don't have time to just step back and kind of be in the moment, my creativity is lacking. I don't have as good of ideas. I feel like I struggle with coming up with answers that normally when I have some solitude, I'm easily able to share an idea. You're an idea master. I feel like I'm pretty good with ideas too. And we talk about, it's exciting to have an idea, right? And so not having that creativity as we relate it to ideas and different things like that, being innovative and creative in that matter. The book is talking about the fact that when you have solitude, you're going to see more creativity. You're going to see more clarity.
Yeah. No, and one of the things that you stated, like when we go on runs and stuff like that, or taking yourself outside of these 4 walls that you're being contained by and allowing yourself to go for a walk and to be in nature in that sense, right? To gain clarity, to not be in these structures that I want to say sometimes would be containing energy, right? And again, it's what's flowing in that, and maybe in your office, it could be what's flowing in the office building that day. If there is a lot of negativity or something's going on, maybe there's a stressful situation. And so it's kind of the essence of where everybody is in that thought process. But I like what you said about, and again, just thinking about myself too. I like sometimes just going on my lawnmower and mowing the lawn, where I created the Instagram page, the Lawnmower Thoughts, just to let myself just kind of think and just enjoy the moment of just not doing anything except just mowing the yard and just kind of letting my thoughts wander and see what pops up, Sometimes it's from a song that something's playing, something that could inspire me to start going down this other path and start thinking. And so just thinking about that as other leaders out there that are possibly listening to this is to think about ways that you gain your most clarity and think about in that solitude, not the group think, right? But going out there and having that solitude and being by yourself and doing your best work. Yeah.
And what a beautiful gift to be, it sounds silly, but be present while you're mowing the lawn so that you can be creative. Yeah. That's you enjoy that, and you come back from mowing the lawn and you have ideas and thoughts, and you can make your what's it called again?
Lawnmower Thoughts.
Lawnmower Thoughts.
That came from me mowing the yard. I was like, what if I had an Instagram page that I just shared my thoughts? Yeah. Maybe I'd get sponsored by Husqvarna.
Maybe.
Companies.
So
hasn't happened yet.
How many of you out there have some really great creativity while you're doing your lawn mowing? So the next one is emotional balance. And so what does solitude what's the benefit of solitude for that? And so solitude allows you to check in with your emotions and not actually escape from them. So not having that balance emotionally, which clarity, with creativity, with being present. That is where we want to find that emotional flow. They talk about balance, but we all know that balance is not 100% achievable at all times. But how do you find this beautiful emotional flow? And it says constant input often numbs and distracts us and distracts us from our emotions. So how many of us really are scrolling through things or Netflix binging or just disconnecting from the world because we may have some emotions that we're trying to numb or possibly distract, or maybe you're just tired and you've worked a lot and you're just wanting to think about nothing, right? I hear that too, where it's like, well, I'm been so busy and I don't want to even think, so I'm just going to numb myself with social media or Netflix or many other things. You can numb yourself with food, those kind of things where your brain kind of goes into this autopilot, checks out, and you can spend hours there, hours.
Yeah. But as you're saying all that stuff, I'm thinking these are all real world problems, right? These things that what we do now with when we check out, whether it's TV, whether it's food, maybe it's alcohol, maybe it's some type of substance,
Yep.
These things that we have available to us today. And as you were saying that, I was thinking, oh, well, geez, I wonder what they did 100 years ago. What did they do 150 years ago when they didn't have TV, they didn't have Netflix, they didn't have food that was plentiful, right? That you can just go and get ice cream or pizza or something like that, And I think this is where probably what they did. They went for walks. I think they went outside and probably did more of that. Or maybe they sat down and they read a book. Maybe they journaled more. I would say there's more time that you got to spend with yourself. And this is, again, the solitude. I think in today's world, I would say a lot of us maybe have a hard time being by ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's where I struggle with journaling. Where what is journaling? Journaling is a quiet time with yourself and being alone with your thoughts. And sometimes you're just like, oh, I don't want to do any of that. I just want to check out. And so, anyways, that just was making me think that, God, just put yourself back 150 years ago. Put yourself in a place where you don't have TV. Put yourself where you can't go to the convenience store and go get that ice cream that's readily available to you. And think about, if I lived 150 years ago, what would that version of me do?
Well, and I suspect there was a lot more communication and connection.
Yeah.
And maybe in another podcast, we can get into the impacts of social media and scrolling, because there's some science, there's some research behind some of that right now. And there's some obvious intention behind people catching the consumer's eye. Yeah. And so I think maybe we can dive into that sometime, because I think it's interesting and it's good to know, right? Being aware, and you get to make the choice. So
I want to just as a reminder, just for myself, is when you and I were in Amsterdam and we went to Anne Frank's the home, right? And we bought her the book, the journal.
Yeah. Diary.
The diary. And I haven't really spent a lot of time reading it. And that's where it's just making me think again, this is what they did, right? They had to be so quiet that they lived up in the attic or in this room that they created. They had to be super quiet, so nobody knew they were up there. And there's a lot of alone time, right? And so I just kind of know. That just kind of made me, that just took me there when you were saying these things.
So read the book.
Read the book. I'm going to start reading the book.
Give me the Cliff Notes.
Yeah.
So solitude is where stress unwinds and inner resilience is built. So part of that too, you just said Anne Frank, and there's this inner resilience, right? They were isolated. They had no other options but to keep themselves sane, and to have some solitude was through journaling and expressing and communicating and playing games and connecting. That's what they had. That's what they had. And we have the choice to have that. We're not forced to have that. So maybe that's a good perspective to think about too, is how do we connect more? Because we do it at home too, where it's like one will be on social media, one will, we both really try to make it appear like it's important or that we're researching. Yeah. But at the same time, we know that we could do better too in making those connections. So the last one is moral courage. So to act from conviction, not convenience, you must be in touch with your conscience. Yeah. So moral courage, and that's the one when we had our heroic huddle or heroic meeting that we have on Thursdays is one that we had lots of good conversation of, like, what is moral courage to you? And that's something, as you're listening, think about it. Like, what does moral courage mean to you? We talk about courage a lot, but we're adding in this moral courage. So solitude can help leaders listen to their moral compass, right? Their values, their virtues, who they are, their identity, especially when the right choice is unpopular or risky.
Mm-hmm.
And that one these days hits me because there's a lot of things that I want to express that might be unpopular in certain walks of life,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it may be risky, right? It may be risky for me to speak out against something. And we would like to have a podcast also at another time to maybe talk about some unpopular, risky things to discuss because we feel so strongly to do so. But I've been reflecting on that, and I have been encouraged by some of our beautiful heroic members and friends that have shared with us some of their experiences of late, of their travels, and who pray for us every single day, and that really bring a lot of love and light to the world. And it was a good awakening of that, not sitting back, that we must have moral courage and we must act on the things that are important to us and to others, and that things don't have to be complicated when it comes to people's life and liberty. And I think the distractions in life have made things appear complicated for people. And so that's my little spiel on that piece of it. But moral courage helps us listen when we have solitude to our moral compass, our values, the things that are important to us. We can't profess to be here to serve others when we're not serving all others. It's not, you don't get to pick and choose who you're going to serve. You either are a servant or you're not.
True that.
Yeah. So that was my passionate exploration of moral courage.
I'm just going to open that up.
Open it.
I mean, a lot of the stuff we're talking about, what's going on in Gaza and Israel and stuff like that. And it's not picking sides, but it's all about humanity.
We don't care about the politics of it.
Right. And it's just they're starving individuals. And again, it's just something I think where we're at right now in my time in my life, where I was actually just had a conversation with my brother about this a little while ago. That it's happened before in the world. And I was like, oh, maybe at that time I didn't really think about it. I was younger. I was just in my own space. But now I'm 55. I just turned level 55. And what's going on. And this is where I was going to do a post on what was going on in Gaza and the people that are starving. And then I said, well, let me make sure I hear the other side. And I listened to this other information on YouTube from people, some journalists from Israel. And he was saying that the food is getting in there, but Hamas is holding that stuff up. And they're the ones that are causing the starvation because they're trying to make it political. But then I'm hearing from the other side that that's not the case. It's back and forth, right? And this is where we get the disinformation. And this is what's wrong with what's going on. And this is where I think today as America, we come in, supposedly the greatest country in the world. It's like, we just show up with force. We take the food in there. This is my thought if I was a leader. It's like, we're going to take the food and we're going to go get it to the people that need it. And if anybody has any problem with that, then they're going to deal with it. And then we'll find out, is Hamas the one that's holding up the food? Is it Israel that's holding up the food? And again, this is nothing to get out there. It's the goal is what's happening to human beings. And there's a great message out there that I've seen on Instagram. This individual that's Jamaican, and he's talking about you don't believe in something because you know it, right? And so like religion, you believe in religion because you don't 100% know everything, but you don't believe in your parents because you know your parents. And then it talks about, if we talk about water, and if we put it in a red can, a blue can, a yellow can, whatever color cans that we put water in, what color is that water? The water's still the same color, but what we see is the outside. We see these colors. And so we make these projections and all these other things. And this is where I think, again, coming into humanity, this is something that we lost, is that we're all human beings. And this is where I would love that ever opportunity came up to create a school of what being human is. And how do we show up for other individuals, to show up with caring? What's going on in America with ICE and all this other stuff? Look, I'm half Mexican, and I have supposedly some family that are on this other side, Trump supporters and all this other stuff. And my grandparents came over, my grandfather came over illegally. And he would be threatened right now if ICE was here, although he did get a citizenship. And I hear the posts and everything, if you were illegal, you wouldn't need to worry about it. Well, that's not the case. That's not what is going on. People are being targeted simply by the color of skin, and it's all different things that are going on. And this is where our little rant right now is, we just need to all be human beings. Mm-hmm. How do we treat each individual as a human being? We're all here to help. What is humanity? And that's what I think the goal would be, hopefully in the future, is that there is no more war, that stuff can just end, and that we really start leading with love and kindness, and get away from this area of war and dominance and greed and power. And that's what's going on in our politics today, the right and the left, sitting on their side, voting a certain way because of their political seat. The stuff that's going on in this Epstein files right now, I'm just going to say this bullshit that's going on of files not being there or whatever. But what's the truth? People are in it. Obviously, there's politicians that are in there. There's a lot of bullshit that's in there. And those guys made choices, and they need to be held to the same laws that we all are.
That's right.
And this is where the indifferences are. So I'm just going on that with that political rant. And,
so wrapping this up is that, people need to find the truth. We're sitting here having this podcast about how to bring more solitude into your life, right? The benefits of solitude. Not everybody gets to have that choice to continue to bring in the solitude that we are so gifted and, able to have that choice more frequently. So I think part of that too is just recognizing the reality, right? Humanity is important. If we could think of people as humans first and then make decisions off of that, one small step for humanity, right? Yeah. But we can't ignore. We're not here to ignore. And I don't want to profess that, we know everything either, but I'm not sitting back anymore and just not saying anything. And, if you have a problem with that, and you don't like it, that's your choice too.
Before you wreck yourself.
You get that choice too. Yeah. But I think that's where people let fear lead them. They feel like things are risky, and people don't speak out as they're supposed to. Yeah. And that's what we're here to do. We've been speaking out since 2019 on how to grow and how to be a better person. And the reality and the fact is there's a lot going on in this world. And we also will incorporate that into the things we feel that are important to talk about.
And it's not about being perfect. It's simply about being better. So with that being said,
so be better.
Let's go. Next level.
Good vibes only.
Peace, you guys. If you made it this far on the podcast, congratulations. And I want to say thank you for sticking with us and listening to this topic. But I want to leave you for some actionable steps that you can take immediately after listening to this podcast, or once you get into your home if you are driving. I want you to think about writing down your answers to these focused questions. What is that one thing that you can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? And then I'd like for you to schedule a time for that primary task that you just wrote down. So those are your actionable steps. Thank you.